These mountains abound with stories. This story goes back thousands of years, back to a time when our ancestors lived and hunt here in southern Africa. But it's a tale that has a remarkable modern twist, about a fynbos bush that's always been part of our culture, and it grows only here in the Cederberg Mountains, about 300 kilometers north of Cape Town.
Weet jy, my ma het ons kinders gebad as hulle ekseem gehad het in Rooibos en dit was die einde van haar ekseem.
I think growing up with Rooibos as part of our lives, I would not have thought that Rooibos in the end would do this.
Nee, ek sê Rooibos tee is direk van die Here vir die arme.
So the tea is more than just a commercial product to them. It is part of the heritage, it's part of their culture.
A culture that goes all the way back to when these mountains were the canvas of our ancestors, and a heritage that now promises to put the people of the Cederberg and a unique plant called Rooibos in the international spotlight. Wuppertal, way off the beaten track in the heart of the Cederberg mountain belt. This picturesque settlement and the people who live here are set to change the course of history. Baron Salomo is the unofficial mayor of Wuppertal. He's also chairperson of the Wuppertal Original Rooibos Co-op. It represents local Rooibos farmers. Today, Baron visits the cemetery right next to the Moravian church, which somehow still owns all the land around here. Barend is paying his respects to his father and his father's father. Generations of his ancestors lie buried here.
Ons is nou hierso by my pa se graf, maar hier het ons my oupa, wat hier begrawe is, my oupa se 5 broers is hier begrawe, my pa is hier begrawe, my ma se pa is hier begrawe.
It's almost 200 years since Moravian missionaries leave Europe to build their church here in the Cederberg. The local people welcome them, share their traditional knowledge with the newcomers. Where's the sweetest water? What plants bring healing? Most significantly, they share a wealth of knowledge about Rooibos.
Daar is het groot geworden, dat is waar mijn maal was. Daaronder is my broer, die is my sister, dit is my ander broer. So ons is allemaal geslagte lang wat ons in die area woon. Geslagte lang.
In recent times, Baron Salomo, the people of the Cederberg and the Khoi and San nations of South Africa are going back to the riches of their roots, to do something that has not even been dreamt of in the past, to stake a claim in the lucrative Rooibos industry.
Ons is 'n klomp kinders in die huis, 12 kinders. En almal van ons was geborsvoed. En ons moeders het nie altyd genoeg melk gehad vir die kinders nie. En as dit op daai stadium kom, die ma voel maar ek het nie meer genoeg melk nie, dan plaas die kinders op die Rooibos tee. As 'n plasvervanger van moedersmelk. En jy weet, daarom voel ek die Rooibos tee loop in my are.
A heritage that has perhaps been taken for granted. But all that has changed dramatically with a new awareness, a new understanding of the traditional knowledge of the remarkable Rooibos. Professor Rachel Weinberg holds a research chair at the University of Cape Town, advising government and civil society on biodiversity. She looks at social and environmental issues relating to natural products with a focus on justice questions.
Yeah, I mean, my passion is really around indigenous plants rather than Rooibos specifically, but I think Rooibos epitomizes all the opportunities, but also I think some of the fraught issues that are involved in the South African natural products industry. Fraught issues like access to land, exploitation of traditional knowledge without giving adequate recognition to the original holders of that knowledge.
Natuurlijk is daar nog een gaping tussen waar hulle is en waar ons is. So ons sal moet 'n posisie hê rondom dit. As dit is wat ons afsny is. Natural Justice will be turning 10 years this year. It was formed in the process when the Nagoya Protocol negotiations started. And so Natural Justice has its history in the context of access and benefit sharing. We're essentially a team of lawyers supporting communities around their group rights, community rights as it pertains to the environment and the sustainable use of its natural resources.
There are a number of key legal instruments that are used, international instruments and national, to regulate this arena of benefit sharing around Rooibos and other indigenous products. And I think the mother of all of those agreements is the Convention on Biodiversity, which was negotiated at the Rare Earth Summit in 1992. And in 2010, a protocol within the Convention of Biodiversity was negotiated called the Nagoya Protocol. And the Nagoya Protocol sets out in much more detail how this concept of access and benefit sharing should be implemented at a national level.
A host of legislation that provides fertile ground for the ventures of the Rooibos growers to flourish. But before anyone could celebrate this global support, an important matter had to be settled.
Because the industry, firstly, weren't sure they were speaking to the right knowledge holders. Then are they speaking to the proper representatives? So the South African government, and I think also given the size of the industry, decided to commission a report.
So the so-called TK report on Rooibos and honeybush was commissioned after a letter was written by the South African Sand Council in 2010 to the Department of Environment Affairs, laying claim really to the first knowledge about Rooibos and honeybush. The South African Sand Council were joined shortly after by the National Khoisan Council, and together they made a case to the government.
Adequate recognition for the traditional knowledge, or TK, of Rooibos is more easily said than done. Leslie Jansen is an environmental lawyer with the Natural Justice NGO. She's a key mover in this landmark fight for recognition. The mission of Natural Justice is to conserve and preserve biodiversity by supporting indigenous people and local communities.
Well, the Khoisan have been, for the last 3 years, trying to get the South African industry to negotiate with them an access and benefit sharing agreement on the basis that the Khoisan is the traditional knowledge holders to the uses of Rooibos.
En hy is baie goed vir ek sien, is hy net so goed. Kinders wat ek sien het. En vir hare wat die hare was, dan kan jy die Rooibos die ook vat en was jou hare daarin vir die skilvers.
Mense verstaan die hele TK verkeerd. Dit gaan nie oor mense wat kennis het van Rooibos nie. Die TK bestaan net. Dit is 'n gemeenskap se tradisionele kennis van 'n produk. Toe die mense kom, ek wil dit voor vir u noem, die Ginsbergs, dit is die mense van Europa wat die eerste keer tee uitgevoer het, etc. Hulle het die tee in Wuppertal area kom, die wilde tee hier kom sny. Toe neem hulle die kennis van ons mense oor daarna toe om tee te prosesseer.
Roger Channels has been helping to make the case for South Africa's indigenous people for many years now. He's the lawyer representing the Sun Council, and he has some tough things to say about the exploitation of the past.
I could put it in activist terms and say the rape by the north of the south needs to stop. But putting it in more conventional terms to say in order for biological diversity of the world to be saved, there needs to be benefit sharing when biological diversity, which means genetic resources, is taken from the usually developing world to the north. And with that taking of biological resources, there needs to be acknowledgement and benefit sharing.
Talks around benefit sharing in the Rooibos industry started several years ago. For Roger Chennels of the Sun Council and his counterpart Leslie Jansen, who represents the National Khoisan Council, it has been an uphill journey.
We met in Kwatu, and that was my first meeting, and the industry actually made a presentation, but they highlighted really their concerns there. I think they were really struggling with Rooibos. Are they really traditional knowledge holders? They felt they were the ones that's been adding the value to the uses thereof, and they felt that they've been building the industries for all these years. Who are these communities suddenly who's been, mostly poverty-stricken laborers coming forth, claiming being inventors of this tea, which is now the second most famous tea in the world. It was just a really difficult process to accept.
My sak opgooi.
Ja.
En dan gaan ek my blokkie of my bankie. Gaan ek mos nou sit.
Ja.
En dan gaan ek mos nou handjie vir handjie vol van die takke vat, van die rooibos se
In die
takke.
kap, ja.
Yes.
Ja.
En dan gaan ek dit mos nou so kap. Ja, my oupa het vertel dat die voorheense mense het nie kon byle gebruik nie, want daar was nie so iets nie.
Okay,
Hulle het die skerpklippe het hulle gebruik om dit te kap. En die ronde klippe het hulle gebruik om dit te kneus. Met 'n bietjie water. Gaan jy dit nou lekker nat sprinkel en dan gaan jy mos nou met die agterkant van die byl.
Okay, ja.
Gaan jy
ek
hom
sien.
kneus.
Ek
Dit
sien.
noem jy nou kneus.
Dis 'n sweetproses,
nou
ja.
maak jy vir hom toe en dan broei hy van self.
Sy kleur is nog maar baie mooi.
Ja.
Die kleur is baie mooi,
Ja,
maar
nee.
Dit was verskriklike baie navorsing wat gedoen was om seker te maak dit is die Khoisan, die Khoi en die San se tradisionele kennis. Ek het net gevoel dankie. Al kry ek dan nog nie geld waarde nie, maar ek kry dan my waarde van my tradisionele van my voorouers. Verstaan nie wat ek sê? Al sal ek hier hy groot geld benut nie, maar net hy trots om te weet. Dit kom van ons af. Dit was al vir my al klaar 'n prys. Dit kan miskien help om ons kinders verder te laat leer. Dit kan miskien help om ons agtergeblewe gemeenskappe te help om projekte van die grond af op te tel en tot iets te bring, want dit is vir my so verskriklik belangrik dat ons as wat nou vandag as kleurling beskou word, maar ons is mos nou die Khoi en die San. Dit is my so belangrik dat ons kinders ook daai selfvertroue kry wat die kommersiële boere gekry het. Jy kan 'n boontjie plant en dan kan jy 'n sak boontjies wen.
Now, since the TK report was tabled, it's been slow getting South Africa's local rooibos industry to share benefits with the Khoi and San nations in exchange for their traditional knowledge. Meanwhile, a foreign multinational, Nestlé, also had to be brought into line.
So what happened with Nestlé was that some tea was supplied to the company by a local South African exporter, and Nestlé took out a number of patents around the particular uses of the tea. There was an outcry because there was concern that here was a company who had got the tea without going through any kind of formal procedures.
And after their patent was stopped, they then went on and signed the first benefit sharing agreement with Rooibos here, which I think was probably a stepping stone towards where we are at now. So I'd say it was important. It's a good example of activists showing that you can't do this anymore, the world has changed.
And certainly Rooibos was an indigenous natural resource as defined by the Biodiversity Act, and there was a concern that this was a classic example of biopiracy. Biopiracy meaning the misappropriation of a resource or of somebody's knowledge without their consent. and clearly it hadn't gone through any formal channels. But I think it was a really important case because it led to a surge of awareness about some of the problems associated with the patenting of our indigenous resources. But it wasn't a unique case, which I think maybe people aren't as aware of. There to date are about 140 patents on Rooibos, which are mostly held by Japanese companies and other foreign companies, and they're for a range of pharmaceutical and cosmetic and personal care and botanical uses.
Onze mense het geweet, daarom weet ons vandag nog. Ons het net nie die papiere om het, maar ons kan vir jou presies sê. Dit kan jy gebruik vir die Rooibos tee. Dit kan jy gebruik vir Rooibos tee. Jy die kwaliteit in jou liggaam kan jy dit gebruik. Ons het dit in boeke geleer, ons van ons ouers af geleer. Vandag werk dit nog. Al wat hulle net doen, hulle kyk die wetenskaplike name van die goedes en gee dit mooi name. Maar ons het die kennis van die Rooibos.
Keeping track of the international ramifications as well as pushing for the Rooibos stakeholders to sing from one hymn sheet back home has been the responsibility of a remarkable team. Cecil Fleer is chair of the National Khoisan Council and a key player in the unfolding Rooibos drama.
We must admit that we never had any problems persuading Nestlé to enter into agreement with the Khoi and San negotiating team. And up till now, we've received 2 payments from Nestlé.
Payments from Nestlé have been a turning point. An earlier breakthrough was the conclusion of the South African government's TK report. It says, the TK for Rooibos and honeybush rests with the communities who originate in these areas.
Sister, jy weet dan mos die Rooibos tee, die roosterkoek en die keiings en die askoek, dit is mos koningskos.
Druk hom so plat. Heel gerol, plat gedruk. En nou gaan hy onder die as kom.
Nou kom hy onder die as. Okay.
Hy gaan nou onder die as kom.
Oei, jenne, maar dit is dan nog lekker.
Nou krap ek hom so toe.
Eers met die fyn asies.
Eers so met die fyn asies, ja. Eers so met die fyn asies.
Weet jy wanneer laas ek nog askoek eet? Toe my ouma goeie nog in lewe, toe ek nog die askoek eet. Ek is so bly. Julle die goed wat ons ouers gedoen het nou lewendig hou. As gevat is so opgeblaas is.
Dis reg.
En die mag is so ontstel. Dat my ouma die as gevat, dat sy vir hom in die beker gegooi, dat sy 'n bietjie kookwater opgegooi en jy het hom gedrink. En hiervan net op vandag. Dan kan jy hoor waar drein grom hy mag. En dat is alles oor. Ons Khoisan gemeenskap hier onder die akkeboom. Jy ook die Joodse vader kniele en die môre dag en aand. Rooibos is 'n unieke produk. Jy sal seker op jou al 2 vingers kan tel wat jy alles daarmee kan maak en wat is die waarde nie. En ek is nou regtig waar ek is nou so diep in die Rooibos dat ek drink Rooibos, ek eet Rooibos, ek praat Rooibos.
This is the reel, one of the world's oldest dance forms, as old perhaps as the Khoi and the San people. Those involved in the fight for recognition of their Rooibos traditional knowledge and the benefit sharing that flows from that see a clear relationship between their activism and ancient traditions.
Hy kinders begin dans. Daarna kom haar vryd en hy kinders wat vir niks bang is nie. En as hy vryd waar ons mense geleef, hulle het mos in die vryheid geleef, daar was niks bedreiging nie.
To me, the main objective is the recognition of the Khoi and San people as a people who had this relationship with the Cederberg Mountains for time immemorial.
En as kinders begin dans, dan proe hulle groei ek, dan proe hulle hy vryheid. En dan, want dat is hulle element, hulle is van niemand skaam nie, hulle is net hulle self. En die manier op hulle moet hulle voete werk, sê net vir my dis iets besonders, want jy kan dit nie naaap nie. Jy kan probeer as jy nie dit in jou het nie. Daar's baie mense wat probeer reël dan. Jy moet dit in jou bloed hê. Ja.
This Rooibos tea struggle brought us to a point where the communities in that Cedarburg mountain belt started to revive their identity. And that to me is the ultimate objective, and not the rand and cent that we can get out of it.
Toe die apartheid nou uitgaan, toe het ons kinders meer selfvertroue begin te opbou. En want hulle kan by plekke ingaan waar hulle nooit kon ingaan. Hulle kon boeke lees wat hulle nooit mag gelees het nie. Hulle kon met mense gesels wat hulle nooit mag gesels het nie. En dit het nou vir hulle gelaat voel, maar ons is ook mense, ons het ook 'n plek in hierdie land. En dit het nou daai trots na vore gebring dat ek dink dat hulle gaan nou baie makliker erkenning gee aan wie en wat hulle is.
The trend in Africa that indigenous communities who self-identify as such are systematically in post-colonial Africa not accessing their collective rights on par with the other more dominant African communities. And so the Khoi San community is part of that movement and part of experiencing that problem. In the context of the Khoi San community, not formally recognized in South Africa, to have had this report come out and acknowledge the Khoi San as the traditional knowledge holders to Rooibos was particularly important. It made it important to assist the industry to understand their obligations in terms of Nagoya Protocol, what is required in terms of benefit sharing and how this process should now move forward, and putting the dispute aside in terms of whether they are actually traditional knowledge holders to the users of Rooibos.
Given the fact that we now have received the acknowledgement from the Rooibos industry, we will now enter into more serious talks on how the real benefit sharing agreement will be rolled out. And the parties that will be involved in this discussions will be the National Khoisan Council, the San Council, and the Rooibos Council. So it's these three councils that are involved. And in an overarching role, the Department of Environmental Affairs will guide us through the process. The thing that the company needs is a permit, and that permit requires of the company to have a benefit sharing agreement with the community that claim to be the knowledge holders of the product that they are using.
Access for the technologically rich countries of the north to the developing countries of the south who would receive benefits in exchange. And that's the concept of access and benefit sharing.
So, the plant that refuses to grow anywhere else on earth, the bush that has pushed previous enemies to share in the benefits of its use, this plant has now forced people to collaborate even further.
By die koei en die san, die diere gaan hulle leer by die diere, hulle leer by die plante. Daarom is daar 'n verhouding tussen ons en die plante wat niemand van ons af kan wegvat nie. So dis 'n diep anker. En dit moet ons, as dit weer ons mense kan net weer vir hulle bietjie, soos ek sê, jy kan bietjie herinner daaraan. Net jy moet hulle net herinner, jy moet hulle leer nie. Jy moet hulle net herinner dat daar gees weer binne hulle wakker. Ja. So maar nou soos jy ook weet, as ons praat van die Khoi staan, hulle is nie net in Wuppertal nie. Hulle is oor die hele land verstrooi. En spesifiek in hierdie onderhandelinge sal dit baie interessant wees om te kyk hoe die voordeel wat uit hierdie, as daar so voordeel kan wees uit hierdie erkenning, hoe dit verdeel moet word.
Not easy at all. Sitting here, I don't know how we will do it. Because if you listen to me, you could ask yourself, how will they manage to distribute benefits to the broader Khoisan people nationwide? Of course, it's an immense challenge. But what we are also looking at is, and I alluded to it earlier, is that we should not only claim monetary benefits, we should claim also non-monetary benefits. By that I mean the establishment of schools where Khoisan people can learn Khoisan culture, Khoisan traditions, Khoisan languages. So, and job creation is also a very big issue. So if we can create jobs through our relationship with a big industry like the Rooibos industry, we can help poor Khoisan communities.
Dis die wonder van Rooibos, die wilde tee is die wonder van Rooibos. Want, soos jy kan sien, voordat daar enige industrie was hy die moedermateriaal. Dis die saak, dis die oorsprong. Hoe kan hy nou niks werd wees? Hy is mos eintlik goud werd. Hy is goud werd. Maar hierdie plant, as jy vir hom gemaak het en jy sit hom teen die, en jy maak hom soos ons tradisioneel het gedoen het en jy sit hom teen die aangeplante tee, dan sal jy net sê, Allah, dis wat. Ja, hy is regtig uniek. Maar wat baie interessant is, hier in Wuppertal waar ons woon, dis die grootste populasie van wilde rooibos in die land. Dis hier by ons. Daarom, omdat dit ons area is, nou is daar nie aandag deur die industrie nie, want dit is by ons wat dit is. Maar hier so sit 'n stukkie goud wat ons moet vertroet is. Ja.
Unfortunately, our story doesn't end there. Now that there's a plan to share Rooibos profits with the Khoi and San people, you'd think all the obstacles have been overcome. Not so. Problem is, the local farmers don't own any of the land on which their Rooibos grows.
En is dit te sê dat die streek, die area van ons, so min grond het nie. Maar wat gebeur het? Kyk, en dit is nou weer ek en die kerk. Die Morawiese kerk. Hulle het heen gegaan en hulle die plasies wat ons gemeenskappe gehad het, soos waarvan Kleinvlei een van hulle is. Ek het nou onlangs as ek besig met 'n proses om uit te vind of Kleinvlei privaat is en of hy reeds onder die kerk is. En hulle het vir my dokumente aangewys dat Kleinvlei is 'n private plek. Maar omdat die mense in onkunde gehou was, het hulle nooit geweet wat is eintlik hulle regte hierso nie.
As a secondary objective, we as the National Khoisan Council envisage to also touch on the ownership of land.
The Khoi and San rock art attests to the uses of Rooibos. And that nothing speaks louder than that. And in our statement to Minister Nkwenti, the community made it very clear we regard our rock art as our title deed. And I've heard government say that. So that kind of authority has been taken on.
Kijk, bij die eerste vergadering gaan we een belangrijke aankondiging voor allemaal.
And national justice played a major role into this, because firstly, not only by facilitating and assisting in this process, they put financial, they make a lot of financial contributions towards this campaign.
Dit beteken vir my nie soveel nie, want my tyd is al amper verby. Maar my kinders en my kleinkinders, hulle gaan daarmee bad. Dat ek kan weet van waar hulle vandaan kom.
I think some of the critics of this negotiations felt that we shouldn't be talking about traditional rights and so on, whilst there's so much unfairness in the land and poverty. If there are millions available in trust funds, one would hope that some of that money is available to devise an appropriate project where money is lent to people who might become farmers, who might buy land or lease land or something like that. So addressing the unfairness, not of the country, but of the country in the Rooibos area is what the Rooibos Trust Fund can try and do.
The people of the Cederberg have come a very long way in a very short time. They fought a battle on behalf of all of us. The people of these tiny mountain villages have achieved something never before done in South Africa. They've staked their claim to legal ownership of something entirely intangible, the traditional knowledge of our ancestors, and they've won. There are few places in the world where such a claim has succeeded. Not only that, they fought for a share of every rand earned by the big Rooibos companies who've exploited Khoisan traditional knowledge in the past. This could well be one of the most important steps in our fight to redress historic injustice. And it's all because of a finicky fynbos bush that refuses to grow anywhere else in all the world.